Nobody's here. Maybe, did we tell them that we're starting later?
Bernie told me.
10. Yeah, Mario said that at 8:10.
Okay, I was supposed to say 8:09. I guess the guys are.
I actually was at Moshe Braun's home. They started
You can change your
a learning called
Like
Shifty. You see, Shifty is like a model of like figure that you start with the Pasuk and the Torah, and then you start going.
Oh, I got a good movie for
Gemara,
you.
and you're showing them and Afronim on the topic. This was on Malam B'Kodesh Vein Moedim, having to do with can you use a part of the film shell Rosh to repair or damage the film shell Yad. So then that's how it started. It's interesting, but it's really a bit even.
A great movie for you. Oh, my God.
Yeah, you're the one who told me that.
Great movie.
You know what's also excellent? The Offer is like the best series.
The offer.
The Offer.
So that's the prequel. to
For
the
making a
Godfather.
Godfather. It was so
That's what I heard.
good. So good. It was like a big one.
You need an offer that you can't refuse. Huh? It's on Prime.
I don't know.
Here's George.
I'm here.
Hi, George.
It was on-
Good evening.
Evening.
So which Tzurba are we in?
We're in volume 13,
Okay,
page 34.
perfect. Because I've missed a few. So now I'm back on.
Good. Here's Chaim.
Oh,
Hi. Here's Abe.
Mazel tov, Ernie.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's Harold.
Hello.
Hi, Harold. Was this for me, Susie? Thank you. We're just waiting for everyone to get on.
Right.
That's who made Curie was. It's Louis.
So page 34. Here's Walter. Bernie and Saul are here.
Okay.
So we talked about Beinoram and Chavero, not telling a lie. We went through the Ramchal, the author of the Mesilas Yesharim, different levels of sheker. So, although we have seen that lying is a very serious transgression, there are certain instances where it is permitted to deviate from the truth, such as for the sake of peace. This is derived by the Gemara Yavamis, the brothers of Yosef, who lied because they were afraid that after Yaakov died, Yosef would attempt to punish them for the brothers selling him to Egypt. The Gemara offers two more examples of cases where the truth was altered for the sake of peace. And Rashi explains the background content of these cases. We're on page 34. We're dealing with changing the truth for the sake of peace. It says Masechti Yevamos Samachei on the base. Rabbi Loi Mishram Loz Rab Shimon. Mutzur lo Adam l'shanis b'davar shalom. Person can tell a white lie. He can change the emes in order to preserve peace. Shenemar Avicha Tziva Kol Tamun Yosef Anasana. That the brothers, after they came back from bearing Yaakov, came to Yosef. It said, our father commanded us to say to you, forgive us. Nowhere do we find that Yaakov said that. But they felt that to preserve peace among the brothers, they felt they could say that. Rav Nosson Omer, not only is it permitted, not only is it mitzvah, Shenema Vayomer Shmuel, Eich Elech, V'shama Shaul V'hargeni. That Shmuel says, how can I go? This had to do, Shmuel said they were going to bring korbanos. He's going to meet with Shaul. If I go, Shaul will kill me. So Hashem told Shmuel to tell him he went. So you see, Hashem is commanding Shmuel to tell a falsehood in order to preserve peace. Dver b'Shmuel Tana Gadol HaShalom Shav HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shinabo Demikar Ksiv V'Adoni Zaken. That in the original story, Sarah says of Avram, V'Adoni Zaken. But later on, when Hashem had Moshe Rabbeinu write the Torah, he had Sarah say V'Ani Zakanti, not V'Adoni Zaken. Because they didn't want, maybe Avram would feel upset that Sarah had called him old, it would lead to quarreling. So for the sake of peace, even Hashem changes. And Rashi comments, Avicha Tziva, Yaakov lo Tziva. Elohim shinu mipnei darkei shalom. They changed it. And Shmuel said, Eichelech, Tziva Yomer Hashem, Eglas bakar tikach biadecha, ve'amarta lizboach, and take an eglas bakar, and say that it was for the purpose of a sacrifice. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tziva l'shamis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to change. And then Rashi says, Sarah Anra Loshan Bazui. Sarah said an insulting word about Avram. Ucheshagila HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dover Avram. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells over the story to Avram, see, Lama zetzach kasara. Why did Sarah laugh on Nizakanti and claiming that she's too old? Veshina Dar Shalom, Hashem caused the words to be changed in the Torah to avoid dispute between Avram and Sarah. The Aruch Laner. The Aruch Laner was Rav Yaakov Ettlinger, a German Rav, around the time of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch and Rabbi Bernays, the mid-1850s, 1860s. And the Aruch Laner is an important commentary on the Gemara. So he questions how it was possible for the brothers to lie, given the prohibition of lying, which should apply to all cases across the board. He answers that their wording was ambiguous and could be interpreted in different ways. Such cases, says the Aruch Laner, is not included within the prohibition. So if it's a vague statement, you can get away with it, says the Aruch Laner. This is his comment in Yevamis on the Gemara we learned, Samachei. Kasha k'tzas. Ve'emes eich mutar l'shaker. The Aruch Laner doesn't understand. How is it ever permitted to lie? Haksiv. Midvar sheker tirchak. Stay away from lying. V'od. Maloshen l'shanos. As the Gemara there said, mutar lo la'adam l'shanos, to change. If you want to tell me that you can lie, havei l'meimah mutar l'shaker b'nei shalom. Come right out and say it. It's permitted to lie. Yesh loymar. The koter mumi yusur kiven de kvarksiv lemor. Because kotomruli Yosef, when they told that the father had said to them, kotom, it's like lemor. Like when by Rabbi Hashem al Moshe lemor, go tell Bnei Yisrael. So the kotomru is extra. Kiven de kvarksiv lemor. V'lachein yesh lomar shehem amru lishna de mishtama l'trei api. They said something that really couldn't be interpreted two ways. De be'emes lo yisholchu rak avicha tziva lifnei moso lemor. The only thing they sent to Yosef is your father commanded before his death, lemor. Yekav doesn't bezeh. Shetziva ma shetziva. He did command things, right? He commanded that he be buried in Eretz Canaan. Yedichsiv, and he told them other things, like it says, "Vaychal Yaakov letzavos es bono." He commanded his sons. V'od osifu l'shluchim. The brothers told the messengers, "Kos tomru Yosef, sheyomru kain me'atzman, uvezeh lo amru beferisha avatziva." Okay, they didn't necessarily say for specifically that the father commanded. Aval Yosef yizbor shavicha tziva. Yosef would figure out that this is something the father had said to them. Gamal zef lachen sholchu v'lo amru ba'atzman. That's why they didn't come to Yosef themselves to say it. They said it derech hashaliach. Achen kiven she'asur lignov das abrios. Gnevas das means like you steal somebody's ideas. Vehem shinu v'amru loshen sheyesh litosbo. They said something that somebody could make a mistake. From that alone, as ochiach shemutar l'shanos b'nei shalom. You can't deceive people. And they said it in a misleading manner. So the Tana over there proves that you can change. It's permitted to alter the truth. It seems according to Aruch LaNer, as long as it's not a bald-faced lie. Like it could have been interpreted different ways. According to Aruch LaNer, the brothers instructed messengers to relay a message to Yosef. The first part of the message merely summarized what Yaakov had instructed his sons before he died. And this is referred to by the words, they commanded messengers to go to Yosef saying, your father commanded before his death, saying. It's not like he told them specifically anything about forgiving Yosef. It's just general commands he gave. The second part of the message was to be said separately. And that part instructed Yosef to forgive the brothers for their sin. This was referred to by the words, tell Yosef, please forgive the brothers, but was not directly linked by the messengers to what Yaakov said. So accordingly, no outright lie was told that Yaakov asked Yosef to forgive the brothers. Rather, Yosef interpreted the two statements together to mean that. Yosef himself interpreted it. It's not that the brothers said it. The contemporary sefer of Halichos Beinon L'Chaveiro, which deals with practical halacha issues of interpersonal relations, discusses a number of cases where it is permitted to lie, some of them based upon the presence of the Gemara Yavamas, and this explanation of the Aruch LaNer. Mutter, v'yeshon raf mitzvah l'shanis b'dibur min ha'emes k'dei limnoam riva. It is permitted and even perhaps a commandment to change the truth to prevent fighting, sina, hatred, or machlokas bein bnei adam. Zos b'mida vein derech acheres. That's if you can't do it any other way, and if it's done with a measurement, where you say something that could be interpreted two ways. So it's not necessarily clear that a lie is being told. Bo adam o miskashel abayis ol misra. Person comes to your office, to your home, ve'ein zman lakablo. Listen, this happens to us. We're at home, and somebody knocks on the door, and we don't really have time. Mutter loymar shamuvukash yeh meucha yoter. Like your wife can say to the person, he will be home later. Olomar ein b'efshar tulakablo. He can't receive you right now, even though you're home. B'mida, amirs asibanal, o amirs tomes tirgom lakaso pigia. It's going to Now, if it's going to cause anger by the person, mutter lo she'eino nimtza. You can even say he's not there. That means if your wife who answers the door doesn't want to disturb the husband and says he's busy now or is unable to greet you right now, if the person thinking that you're home is going to be upset by that statement, your wife can even say you're not home. Haya mevukash yashan, if you're sleeping, yesha kosav shenit lomer eino nimsa. Whoever answers the door can even say you're not there. Shari nishmasa olalamalo. When you sleep, your neshama goes up to Shemaim, so maybe you're not there. It's one of these things where it's like the statement is ambiguous. It's not a lie. Ha'ara, ater b'sif shel fanenu, davka shelo b'nechachut yiladim k'tanim. It's only when no children are around, I guess because the children are going to learn from that.
By example.
Then, amavakish b'chaver halva. You ask somebody for a loan. The person doesn't want to give the guy a loan. Misibot shonot yesh la'akel v'lomer ein lanu et hadavar ze lotet lecha. Person comes over and wants to borrow a Megillah, and you have a Megillah, but you don't want to give it to the person. You can say, "I don't have it." Amra ima liladeh lasos davar mava asu. Mother tells the children to do something. They did it. And the father comes and asks the children, "Who told you to do this?" And he's upset. The children can say, "We did it." They don't have to say that my mother told us to do it. Even though he might get upset with the children, but to prevent meriva between the husband and the wife, they can change from the truth. Yiladim ktanim rabim umitkotetim. If little children are fighting, mutar l'shaka k'dei lahashkin shalom b'neihem. You can also say something. Oh, the police is going to come to take you away, or whatever, to quiet them down. It says to make peace. Isha olechas litvol v'sho'alim lan olechas. A woman's going to the mikveh, and she's going out to her car, and her neighbor sees her and says, "Where are you going?" She's going to visit an important woman, the mikveh lady. She doesn't say that, but it's the Gemara has a case. Those of us in the Daf Yomi, the classic case, your wife is taking a bath or a shower, and somebody comes to the door and asks for your wife. You can say she's not home. It's a davar tznius. The Gemara had something like that. You're visiting at the place where the hosts are not careful about kashrus. Or they're not trustworthy. And they offer you to eat or drink something. And Rishon Lomar Shinam allergim la'oso Michael, or Shinam b'dieta or b'tainis. You can tell that I'm allergic to these things, or I'm in a fast, or I'm on a diet. So as not to insult them. Let us now return to a subject mentioned explicitly in the Shulchan Aruch in the same siman. Shulchan Aruch states that one must refrain from taking a shvua or oath, even though it's true. V'yizar milishava. A person in general should stay away from oaths. Afilu be'emet. They want you to swear that your name is Ernie Agatstein. So it's true, but we are warned to stay away from shvuos. She'elef ayoros hayu liyana Amelech. Yana Amelech, one of the Chashmonai kings, had 1,000 villages. V'kulam nechravu b'shvil shayu nishboin shvuos. Al b'shayu mekayim nason. They were all destroyed because it was their practice to take oaths, even though they would fulfill their oaths. And the Yalkut Yosef records it as practical halacha. Yizar milishav afil al davar emes, v'afilim nishbal al davar makaymo. The Ibn Ezra writes very strongly about the severity of the sin of using Hashem's name for an oath in vain. Rabbim choshvim ki hanoseh Hashem lashav lo asa avei gedolah. Somebody who takes Hashem's name in vain they think that it's not a big avera. Va'ani, says the Ibn Ezra, erelahem he kasha mikol alavin aboy machlo. It's more stringent than any of the lavim that follow in the Aser Sadibros. Ki harotzech v'noef, the murderer and the adulterer, shehem averot kashot, they're very strong sins. Lo yuchal kol eid lirtzoch v'linov. Person can't commit murder and commit adultery anytime he wants. Number one, ki fached, he's going to be afraid. But someone who has gotten used to taking oaths, you could take 100 oaths in one day. The one doesn't even know that he took an oath. If you mochiach him, why did you take an oath? You take another oath to say, I never took an oath. Merov rigilosabot, because he's so used to taking oaths. It becomes everyday nature for him I swear, by using that kind of language. If Klal Yisrael only had this avera, that would be enough to lengthen our golus. Va'ani era shigonam. And I will show how crazy it is for people to take oaths. Let's say a person has an enemy and he kills the enemy. Okay, he has satisfied his lust for revenge. The adulterer also satiates his desire. A thief has a certain Yetzirah that he's fulfilling by stealing. 8 sheker. And somebody who's taking false testimony is either trying to also hurt somebody by taking revenge, or he's trying to curry favor with the other side, that he's taking false witness to help the guy. However, if a person uses Hashem's name in vain, or takes an oath when there's no purpose to take an oath, there's no anah, and it's a chilul Hashem. The Sefer Chassidim writes that one may not speak to an individual who takes oath using Hashem's name. Someone takes an oath not because the government is forcing him to do it. So also Dabarim, we can't even talk to him. The Pischei Tshuva expands on this and writes that it's customary they never take an actual shvua, even in cases where it may be technically permitted according to halacha. It's the practice of Jews not to take an oath even on the truth. And even if they're going to lose money by not taking the oath. They have trust in Hashem that whatever they lost money-wise by not taking the oath, Hashem will give it back to them. Zos aval pi shemedina mutar lishava, im enu mishtaveh. Even though meikar adin, if you cannot come to an agreement, you can't compromise with them, whatever. You shouldn't take a shvu on your life. Like people, on my life, I swear that such and such and such. If you take an oath about, I take an oath about the Jewish religion, that's a terrible oath. Even if you don't say, I swear. You should say to your friend, believe me. You don't have to say, I swear that this is the truth. Just tell your friend, I believe you. By the way, Bernie and myself are asked to take depositions all the time for our workers' compensation cases. So they say, do you swear? Do you solemnly swear? So you say, I so affirm. You don't use the word swear, you say, I so affirm. And that's acceptable. You do the same thing? Let us conclude this shiur discussing various mitzvahs b'non l'chavero with the famous words of Rabbi Melech of Lezhensk in his tefillah to be recited before the regular tefillah. It says, Tatzilenu mekinas ish mere'eyu, that you should be saved from jealousy. V'lo yala kinas adam alibenu. We should not be jealous of somebody else. V'lo kinasenu lacherim, and other people shouldn't be jealous of us. Put in our hearts that we see the qualities of our friends, and not their deficiencies. Okay. So, any comments, questions? Hey, I wrote. Let's move on to page 53. Halachos of Natilas Yadayim before a meal. Those of you who started an Orach Chaim from the beginning, we already dealt with Natilas Yadayim, like when you wake up in the morning, because of Ruach Ra. Because of when you sleep, you have a Ruach Ra, and we have Natilas Yadayim when we wake up. This is going to be dealing with Natilas Yadayim before eating. Washing one's hands before a meal is part of the system of the rules of Tum and Tahara, ritual purity and impurity, presented by the Torah and Chazal. Halachos of Natilas Yadayim played an important role in Jewish life in earlier periods of history. Indeed, its impact was easily recognizable in the heyday of the Beit HaMikdash, when all the laws of ritual purity were in full effect. The Natilas Yadayim that we perform before eating bread is one of the few halachot based upon Tum and Tahara that remain applicable today. In the next series of shiurim, we will learn about the origins of this practice and many of the halachos and practical applications of Natilas Yadayim. So what are the origins of Natilas Yadayim? According to the Gemara in Eruvin, Shlomo Melech initially instituted the enactment of Natilas Yadayim. Rashi explains that he did so as a safeguard for purity. In other words, washing hands ensured that a person remained clean before eating bread, even if his hands were impure. This is Eruvin Chafal of Amud Beis. Amr Rav Amar Shmuel, B'shah Shatiken Shlomo Eruvin v'Natilas Yadayim. Shlomo Melech was Mesakein, established the dinim of Eruv, like there's different kinds of Eruv. Eruv Chatzeros, where you put a string around the city and you could walk there. Eruv, by allowing you to cook for Yontif, Eruv Tafshilin. All of these Eruvin were established by Shlomo Melech. Yatza Baskal V'Amra, B'ni, Im Chacham Libecha Yismach Libi Gamani. So it showed the great wisdom of Shlomo Melech. V'Omer, Chacham B'ni V'Samach Libi V'Shiva Cher Pidava. Rashi says V'Yadayim, Nitil Yadayim Lasos Yag L'Taros. He made a fence so that people would avoid eating their food b'tumah. The Gemara in Shabbos explains that Shlomo instituted Netilas Yadayim specifically for kodshim, sacrificial offerings. At a later stage in history, Shammai and Hillel instituted Netilas Yadayim prior to eating truma as well. In other words, Shlomo wished to ensure that one's hands would be clean prior to consuming korbanos and other sacrificial foods, while Shammai and Hillel desired that one remain pure prior to consuming truma as well. The Gemara also explains that a person's hands have the status of a sheni l'tuma, a second degree of ritual impurity. Sheni l'tuma is an object that becomes impure from a rishon l'tuma, an object with first degree impurity. This category of rishon l'tuma refers to objects that touch an avatuma, a primary source of impurity, such as a dead insect, or a person who is a zav, who has a seminal emission. Thus, Chazal deemed one's hands to have been rendered impure by a rishon l'tuma because of the possibility that the hands touched an impure object without the person's awareness. If you touched an impure object, which was a rishon, you become a sheni. So even if one does not know that his hands were rendered ritually impure, since people's hands are active and may have touched an impure item. I'm reading the footnote. The rules of a sheni l'tuma are less strict than those of a rishon, and it cannot render other non-holy objects impure, though it does render truma impure. Okay. The Masechta Shabbos Yud Gimel, Amud Beis, says Shmona Asar Davar Gazru, that there was a time, normally Beis Hillel outnumbered Beis Shammai, but there was an event where they went up to the attic of Hananiah ben Chizkiah ben Garon, and there were more Beis Shammai nicks than Beis Hillel nicks. They quickly passed a number of takonos that favored Beis Shammai. The following things passel truma, and one of that is hayadayim, the hands. Now, truma, chulin can become a sheni, but it can't go further than a sheni. Truma can become a shlishi, but truma that's shlishi is invalid, but it doesn't contaminate further. That's why they call it pasels truma, as opposed to using the word mitame truma. If you mitame something, you give it the power to convey the truma further. So, for example, a sheni can mitame hegdish. How so? Because hegdish can go down to a revi l'tuma. So you don't just pasel hegdish, you mitame hegdish, because the shlishi hegdish can make, if it touches another piece of shlomi meat, can make that meat a revi. But truma cannot go beyond shlishi. That's why it's only pasel. That's why elu poisel etc. V'hayadayim. Now, what's with the hands? Yadayim askanio is saying, we don't know where we put our hands. We put our hands here. We put our hands there. Also, Shlomo Gazal Kodshim, Shlomo Melech Goizer, that we should wash our hands before we eat kodshim. V'asu inu, the Shammai nix came the gozer af l'truma. Thus, Chazal decreed that unwashed hands were considered tamei with respect to truma and could render it impure. Therefore, Kohanim were required to perform the Tis Yadayim prior to eating truma to purify their hands. What exactly is problematic about unwashed hands that may have touched other surfaces or items touching truma? Based upon what we have seen so far, we might expect that one's hands may have become impure and would thus render the truma impure. Rashi explains the issue differently. In his opinions, hands may touch dirty surfaces, and it is disgraceful for those hands to come in contact with truma. Rashi quotes his teachers, who explain that the concern is indeed one of tuma. Perhaps one hand's touched something ritually impure, and one would then render the truma impure as well. And this is also the view of Rabbeinu Hananel in Shabbos, and the Rambam in Parashat Mishnayos. Says Rashi, Askon Yosein, V'noigin bibsor, he touches his armpits or his nether regions, right? The Bakum Tinoifis, which are dirty. Ugnaila truma bekach, and it's not a tuma issue. It's like a disgusting issue. V'nimas la'oichlin k'shenageh b'biyodim esuavos. If a person's hands are filthy and he touches, nobody wants to eat it. However, Rabbi Seinu Mefarshim means his teachers, Chayshin Shem Anagu Yodah B'tuma. So after citing the explanation of his teachers, Rashi then questions it. How does Natilas Yadayim solve the problem that one may be ritually impure and render the Truma Tummy as well? If one is ritually impure, then he requires immersion in a mikvah, not merely Natilas Yadayim. Rashi adds two other questions as well. First, why does concern exist that one's hands touched a rishon l'tuma? Maybe it touched an avatuma, a primary degree of impurity. Second, why is the enactment focused upon one's hands when one's whole body would be rendered impure upon contact with the impure objects? When you touch something and you become tummy, your whole body becomes tummy. What's this business about the hands? So the Ritva explains that their view is not that Natilas Yadayim renders the hands ritually pure from their prior state of impurity, but rather that it is like psychological training for a person, as washing his hands will train him to be more careful to remain ritually pure. Says the Ritva, Ibnei Yadayim Askonios, Pirshu Arishonim Zal, the Dilma Naga Betuma, but Velavadai, he didn't realize that. V'hiksha Rashi didn't like it. He asked the question, why would washing your hands solve the problem? You need to go to a mikvah. Lav kushya. This is just a stringency. The yesh lochush, that you should be careful. That you have to watch your hands. And v'gami speak lam betar benetila. It was enough for them, the process of the Natilas Yadayim, which would purify them. Otherwise, they would lose out on everything. According to Rashi's teachers, the concern here is of actual tumah. But according to Rashi, the issue one of general cleanliness. What's the difference between the two approaches? May arise if one touched the covered areas of his body during a meal. According to Rashi, one would need to wash his hands again. While according to Rashi's teachers in the Ritva, one would not need to, since it does not render his hands tummy. According to the Gemara in Chulin, Chazal at a later stage decreed Natilas Yadayim even for non-Kohanim, eating non-sacred foods as srach truma, an ancillary decree due to truma. That means we are now going to wash our hands even before we eat chulin, because it's sort of like a derivative of truma. If everyone washes their hands before eating, then the Kohanim would also be accustomed to washing their hands before every meal and would not accidentally eat truma without washing their hands. Masech l'chulin, on Ravidi Barav Rav Yisuk Bar Hasyan, Natilas Yadayim l'chulin, mipnei srach truma. It's because of Truma. The reasons given for washing hands prior to a meal would seem to apply to any foods. I mean, why dafka bread? Both with respect to the earlier enactment focusing on Truma, as well as today when it applies to all non-Truma food. However, we know that Netilas Yadayim is performed only before the consumption of bread. The Rambam clearly states that in Hilchos Brachos, Kol oichel hapas, shemevarch alav hamoitzi, tzarich Netilas Yadayim tchila, v'sof, v'aval pi shehi pas chulin. You have to wash your hands before, and you have to do my machronim after you eat it. So, but it's only bread, it's not other food. Why was the mitzvah of Netilas Yadayim limited to washing prior to eating bread? The Ran, another Rishon, offers one explanation, that Chazal only enacted Netilas Yadayim when there's a set meal, which usually includes bread. When you're eating bread, that's a real set meal, not like a snack. But if you can eat fruit like a snack, you don't need Netilas Yadayim. The Levush offers another explanation, that most truma came from grain. Ulefi she'ein rova truma el mimine pas. It's from either wheat or rye or oats because it was a grain. Most people don't eat grain unless it's been made into bread. Rye bread, whatever. So we will discuss later in this volume that one who eats a large amount of grains, classified as pasa babi kisnin. Let's say you eat a pizza, a whole bunch of pizza, which we'll see is a pasa babi kisnin, or a lot of cookies, right? Grains or pretzels. Grains that have been baked into something that's not bread, but you eat a lot of it. So you do recite Hamotzi. We're going to learn this in Shir 7 and 8 of this volume. What do we make the Netilas Yadayim on, besides bread? Is such a person also required to perform the Netilas Yadayim with a bracha as well? The Shulchan Aruch HaRav writes that if one eats this type of mizonos as the basis for his meal, he should indeed wash with the bracha, and explains that when used in place of bread, it has an equivalent status. I can think about, somebody is going to have cheese and crackers, but they're going to have a meal of that. It's not just a snack. You're going to eat a lot of crackers and a lot of cheese. So that might be something that you'd wash, and you'd have to make a motzi on. This type of grains that have been baked in a non-bread form, but you're eating your meal. I think pizza is a good example. It's also, most don't consider it bread, but it is definitely grain, made from grain, not necessarily baked like a bread. But if you eat a lot of it and you're establishing your meal with the pizza, so you would wash and make a motzi. V'lachmaniyot dakot, or thin rolls, kashem shmo elet kviyut zu le'ina motzi, just like it, because you're kovei suda on it, it makes you make a motzi. Kach mo'el Netilas Yadayim. Sholachlok b'neim lepas gemura. This is the Shulchan Aruch HaRav saying this. We shouldn't make a distinction between real bread. Given shekovei alem kamo al pas gemura, you're being kovei suda. V'var gam ken birchas on Netilas Yadayim, and you should make the bracha. Despite these views, the Yalkut Yosef writes not to make a bracha when washing for pasa babi kisnin, even when fixing it as the basis for one's meal, due to the principle of safek brachas lahakel. we are lenient regarding uncertainty for brachos. All brachos are midrabanan, except for two: birchas hamazon and birchas Torah. So the general rule for rabbinic law is safek rabbanon lekula, safek deraisa lechumra. You see a piece of meat lying on the street, you don't know whether it's kosher or not, so it's a safek. Now meat, if it's not kosher, that's a deraisa. It's either it's a nevela or it's a treifa. So we say you don't eat it because it's safek deraisa lechumra. Saying a bracha, any kind of bracha, even a bracha before you shake the lulav, on the tilas lulav, that bracha is a rabbinic law. The shaking lulav is a deraisa dika mitzvah, but the bracha on it. Now, let's say you shook the lulav and you forgot whether you said the bracha or not. The safek bracha, you don't. The leniency by bracha is not to say it, because we don't want to say Hashem's name for no purpose. However, he adds that one who does recite a bracha has upon whom to rely. Hakoveh sudal pasaba b'kisnin, uga, a cake, is grains, right? But it's not made in the shape of a bread or like a bread. But let's say this is going to be your meal. You're going to eat a real big piece of cake. Some say to even make a bracha. This is Yalkut Yosef pasking that he thinks you don't make a bracha. But if you make a bracha, you have who to rely on. Until now, we have discussed one reason for Netilas Yadayim concerns of tahara based upon truma. The Gemara Brachos offers another reason: cleanliness and holiness. Making yourself holy, that's using the Netilas Yadayim. V'isem kedoshim elu mayim achronim. That's washing your hands after the meal. Ki kadosh ze shemen. They used to also use like a spiced oil to make their hands smell better during a meal. Ani Hashem Elokechem zu bracha. That's benching. According to this Gemara, the Netilas Yadayim is not related strictly to tumah or cleanliness with respect to truma, but rather it relates to a certain level of kedusha that a person must achieve before beginning his meal. The Maharsha here understands the Gemara to refer to the same considerations with respect to truma as are brought in the Gemara Chol. Now, the Mishnah Berurah summarizes the reasons for Netilas Yadayim at the beginning of Siman 158, the opening Siman on the laws of Netilas Yadayim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Tam takos netila u'mishnei dvar. The reasons why they enacted Netilas is two reasons. Echad mipnei srach truma, because of this truma business. Because the hands move, could have touched something. In the days where Truma V'Tara was around, and the Kohanim ate Truma, the rabbis made a law that they have to wash their hands. Otherwise, they would be metame the Truma when they touched it. Sort of keep the Kohanim in line, they made it a rule for everybody. Whoever eats bread, says the Mishnah Berurah. So in our day, Kohanim don't eat truma, they had tuma, but still this takana remains. New reason that Mashiach might come tomorrow. We're going to build a Beis Hamikdash. We're going to have to know how to deal with Tumah V'Tara. So we've kept one of the laws of Netilas Yadayim around. Otam, l'takonas netila mishum nekiyos kedusha, like the last thing we mentioned, holiness. Samchuk Rama Akra de Biskadish de Visem Kedoshim. The Rambam writes that once the enactment was formalized to perform the Tisadayim, it remains in effect even when neither reason applies, such as when one's hands are clean and ritually pure. So, whoever eats bread, you got to wash before and after. Even though it's not truma, even his hands are not dirty. And we know for sure, Eino Yodea Lehen Tuma. His hands are not tummy. Lo yoichal tol shtei yadav. He may not eat until he doesn't tisadayim. V'chein kol davar shetibula b'mashkin. Anything that is dipped in liquid, tzarich tisadayim tchila. That's the karpas, right? Seder night. We don't make a bracha, but we do it tisadayim before we dip. That's based on that halacha in the Rambam. Okay. Any questions, comments, Aaron? And then we're going to, the Daf Yomi people will call in a few minutes. Like, everybody have a good week.
Right.
I'm going to sign off and then sign back in.